Well, guys, I have talked about a job that I've done several times, I think, for you, haven't I, Richard?
Oh, yeah, I've made small appearances,
Yeah.
I guess.
And this is the detail of the quality of the casting patterns that he has sent me. And he does beautiful joinery work. And you look over here, and this is the actual castings after he gets through machining the teeth on them that we cast. But he does an excellent job on his patterns. Keith and I are on our way to Auburn, New York. We just crossed the state line, and Richard has a Muller that I've been wanting for how many years?
Oh, 3 or 4.
At least. And you know, it's way up here in this part of the country. I'm never up here, but he was kind enough to meet us on I-90 right here across the state line, and we're gonna move the Muller. But anyway, Richard is a retired pattern maker, and he's one that made these patterns, and he's a really nice guy. I consider him not only a customer but a good friend of mine. But we're going to take a quick look at the Muller. It's actually a mixer. It's not what you usually see me using, and this is a 3-phase machine that they used at the Foundry Richard worked at for mixing. You said they did green sand in this, or was that coarse sand?
It was mostly a coarse sand, using it for, we didn't really build cores with it. It was a pattern shop, and occasionally we would back up an epoxy faced pattern with sanding. You just mix epoxy with it, the sand, and that's what we used it for, is to mix that up.
All right. So as you can see, we are slowly acquiring machinery as we head towards and into New York. Keith and I will be going into New York City and picking up one more machine. Hey, I already got it to where we're going. So
we're going to be singing the Beverly Hillbilly song here before.
Yeah. But yeah, we got a load, and we're not finished yet. But I wanted to thank Richard for meeting us over here, and it's been a great honor to meet him, because I've never met him face to face. This is the first time we've actually got to lay eyes on each other.
Yeah, I've watched just about every Windy Hill Foundry video that was out there, but
hopefully it was a positive effect on you, right?
For the most part.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Yeah, but this guy, you know, he knows his stuff, and he has often given me advice on how to do things. And it's guys like this, it's well-seasoned, experienced founders that I have in my life that I can rely on and talk to when I run into issues, that really help keep Windy Hill Foundry going.
But you have to be careful, Clark, because what I don't know, I'll make up.
Well, I can kind of see through it. But he's given me some advice on something I'm fixing to work on next when I get back home, and we'll cover that in the video if it actually works. I'll show it. I won't say what it is at this point. But anyway, well, everybody, this is Mr. Richard Freer, retired pattern maker, and hopefully we'll be talking about him again in the future.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Before we cover the Muller, I want to put one quick thing in. It's a box opening that I received from a Mr. Peter Breed out of Cambria, California. Mr. Breed had seen one of my videos where I was manually drilling some holes, which I don't usually do, and I didn't have any long centers. They're only about this long. So Peter Breed sent me these. Let me show you. These are 5-inch center drills. I got a 1/4 inch, maybe a 5/16 and a 1/2 inch. And I will definitely be putting these in my toolbox to make sure I know where they're at. But yes, I have never owned any this long, but I sure could have used them on that job I was doing back last month. So Peter, I want to thank you very much for those. It probably won't be too long before I'm actually using them on another job coming up. You know, you've seen how I have to do things primitively with my lathe. I could have knocked them out a lot faster with a Bridgeport if I had one. So that's something on my shopping list for later, you know, when I get rich. I actually have already used this some. It is a 3-phase Muller, so I have to run it through a phase converter, which is noisy itself. So you'll hear a bunch of racket when I'm running it. Iron Fest. I'm going to be there this coming Saturday, and I want to see you there at the Georgia Ag Museum. Yes, this is the new Iron Fest they're starting up in Georgia, and I'm going to be there Saturday for sure, possibly Friday, and then we got to leave out Sunday, so I won't be there for the open house. But I've been to Keith's shop. Now, if you need more information, tune in to Keith Rucker's videos, vintagemachinery.org, and check it out. The new furnace. I guess we're going to make this the third part of the trilogy, or a little taste of it anyway. We do have it running. I tested it, as you can see here, but we ended up having to make a modification on it before going any farther with it, which I'm doing now. I'll show you in detail what I'm doing. So this particular furnace, well, let's just go out there to it. Let me back it up a little bit. Okay, now, all right, so this is the new furnace. We did have it going the other day, as you saw in the video, but this looks different than it did before. I still got to cut that sheet metal out tonight and create a much bigger opening. And the reason for that, if we were going to do a continuous pour from the time you start tilting it, the way I had it was going to work just great. If you had a 200, 300, 400 pound casting you had to pour, then the way I had it set up was going to do just fine. The problem I ran into was once you start pouring and tip it back up, it would freeze off in the tube. The tube was 10 inches long. Now, my theory behind that was, as long as we put it back up level, as long as the iron was hot enough, it was going to keep the tube hot enough to melt any iron back to liquid and let it run back into the furnace, which the point of entry was down at the very bottom, up under the dross and all that. Well, that was not working. Like I said, you could tilt it one time, and then when you tilt it back up, it would freeze off. So I had to keep it streaming the whole time. This, we're going to make a lot bigger opening now and try it tomorrow. So I'm still not exactly sure we have this nailed. I'm probably still going to have to put a bigger opening in there. I hope not. I don't want to make that front lip, the pouring lip, too big. Now, this is a lot like a cupola as far as the way we run it, because that bottom pan, each time we run this furnace, we have to make a new bottom inside that pan with sand, and that's what we're going to be using this Muller or mixer for, is to go ahead and mix up the clay and the sand to ram into the bottom of this. And so tonight we're going to be pounding sand, and I'm going to bore you to death with that. We have already run this twice. The first time during the test it was successful, so last night we decided we were going to actually pour these molds. These 12 molds. And that's when it froze off on me. I decided before I ever start pouring to do a test and pour some right here on the ground, that little puddle you see there. And as soon as I tipped it back up, I rolled it over to the first mold and started to pour. Nothing came out. So I spent the next hour driving a rod and everything else down the throat of that, trying to clear it, and it was not coming out. So what I was stuck with, luckily I only put about 100 pounds in there. I have a manhole now, a really rough looking one, but that was laying in the bottom of this furnace this morning when I dropped the bottom to remove it. So anyway, what you're looking at here is some of the residual sand. We're going to throw that right back in the sand mixer. I don't like wasting my clay. And each time I mix more sand, which I've got plenty of now, I've got quite a bit more. Each time I mix sand up, I'm using a lot of my clay up that I'd rather keep for the regular molds. So anytime I can recycle clay with the sand, it's a good idea to do that. Before I dump sand in here, I wanted to show you guys this system. And this has two knives on the outer perimeter that scrape the bottom. And I was confused at which way this thing went until I cleaned it up and noticed that. So what it does, if you can see this, you notice that the very top of the dome curves in like that. Well, as it starts mixing good and starting to bind, it will climb up the walls and then fall back over into the middle, steadily mixing. Pretty neat design. It's going to be noisy, but I'm fixing to crank it up, and I'll show you what's going on. Now I got some fresh sand and dry sand mixed in together that's already got some clay, so I'm going to add a little more clay to this as I go. You can see the size of that clay. That's a bigger grain size. You see how it's evenly distributed now? They're very fast. And it's just taking this and extruding it from the bottom and pushing it up the side of the drum. Add a little more water to it. Guys, I think that's good. Of course, that produces, a 5-gallon bucket produces about sand by the time you're done. The reason for that, the clay is swelling up. Well, I got ahead of myself. I still got to cut this piece of metal out of here, but we'll ram the bottom first. That's not going to be in our way. Now this is going to compress down to 2 inches. This job that we're going to do, I usually have 6 months to prepare for a big job, and I did not have that privilege on this one. And I'm doing everything I can to help these guys. And it all depends on this furnace doing it, because I'm not hand labeling them. There is no way I am gonna, no, no, not that volume of iron. I am done hand ladling like that. Now, as I said, with the first spout that we had on here, it did great when you first tilt it and start pouring, as long as you don't stop. You stop, back off on it, it'll freeze off on you like it did with us, like it did with me last night. And that was no fun. So live and learn. I know what not to do the next time. We're going to pack this really good, and then I'm going to work on getting that piece of metal out of my way. And then we'll come back and we'll round the skirt of the bowl, because this is going to be a big old sand bowl. And once I get this all tamped nice and even, I don't have to worry about it drying out on me. And you know, as much clay as I have in this, it's not going to happen anyway. Not until I put the fire to it. The job we're working on, like I said, I'm going to be pouring this tomorrow. It's going to take me a couple hours to get this bowl prepared. Once I get the skirt made, I have to mix up some clay with a higher concentration of clay and water to form a gasket around this to seal it from the upper chamber, from the furnace. We don't want this thing leaking flames out the sides. And my gasket worked because we've already ran it twice and had no issues. But everything you're doing from this bed of sand to the skirt to the gasket is only temporary. It's only for one use. That's the drawback to it. You can pour not only iron in this, you can pour bronze. And you're not going to be cross-contaminating the furnace, because this sand bed is where the metal resides, not above it. The other key factor to this is it will keep the iron hot all the way to the mold. It's not cooling down in a crucible as you're trying to transport it. The third good thing about this is the quantity I can pour at one time. I can pour all the way up to 400 pounds with it. So, and the fourth thing is I don't have to wear all that protective gear. I do have I do wear my spats and I do wear my hard hat, but as far as wearing 30 pounds of leather, I don't have to do that anymore, because I am a good 4 feet now from the stream of iron coming out that nozzle. Years ago, I was helping the Alabama art casters sometimes. It was hard to get over there because I had my own job to do here. But I learned a lot about cupolas. Of course, they use what you call a cupolet. And a lot of my knowledge on cupolas is based off my experience with helping those guys. And they were very informative, and honestly, that's the technique you're watching me do here, I picked up from them. And you know, I mean, anybody that's running a cupola is going to know you got to do this. They call this on a cupola, this is the cookie. Had to ram up the cookie, and then by the end of the iron pour, when they were done, you have 2 trap doors at the bottom of the cupola, and this, along with any of the residual leftovers, coke and all that, and the slag, it all dumps out the bottom. This one is a hybrid. It doesn't have a trap door on it. You just, next day after it's cooled down, after you're done, you just take the bolts out and drop the pan. And the reason for that is it doesn't create thermal shock on the refractory in the furnace. It slows down super slow. So as long as you block off the exhaust. It's getting pretty dense, guys. Now remember, when I first dumped it in here, it was way up here. That's how much we've compressed it. Alright. So if you're wondering what that's going to look like when it comes out of there, it's going to look just like red brick. It'll vitrify and it will turn to a brick-like substance like that. And we're not going to worry about that, the metal shavings. These are decorative castings, so I'm not worried about it. Alright, next step is to fill this in with sand, which is going to take another bucket. Alright, so we are finished with the sand bowl. Much bigger opening to for the pouring lip. This one is going to be limited to pouring about 350 pounds because of the way I had to do the pouring lip, because that brings the level down. But it's hard to tell here, but this is actually a little higher and it sweeps back into a taper, getting bigger and lower as it goes back. So I'm only losing, and actually I'm only losing about 2 inches off the top, which is fine. And you know, later I'll just make a deeper bowl, right? If I need to pour 400 or more pounds, it's no problem. So the next thing I got to do, it is 1:15 in the morning on a Sunday, Easter Sunday at that. Happy Easter, by the way. Belated Easter, because I guess it's going to be next week when you see this video now. But anyway, I got to make a gasket, and then I will set the furnace back down on top of it. I haven't moved this in any direction, so the furnace should line up pretty good. I got 2 bolts that are a lot longer than the other 2, and I'm going to start those 2 180 degrees from each other, and that will kind of help create the straight up and down effect and keep it from getting my gasket smushed sideways or, you know, squeezed out the wrong way. Alright, so we got a gasket on there, and the gasket is about 80% clay, 20% sand. And what I do, I start off with just a little clay ball and I squeeze it. You're actually wedging it, and you know, then you make a ball and turn it 90 degrees and squeeze it back out again and make dog crap about 6 inches long and lay in place. It's been working good, so I'm going to continue. I'm going to go ahead and bring the furnace and put it over on top of this, get it close, and then I'm going to take my longer bolts, as I said, and I'm going to put one here, one over there, and from there I will lift up on it, and then I will kind of draw those in tighter as I put the shorter ones in on that side. it's looking pretty good. Raise it up. I've got a decent amount of thread on both bolts now. So I could have just, after I got these two bolts started, I could have just sat it straight down and squished the gasket, right? But if I did it like that, it could move the position of the top bracket to the bottom bracket, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just take my time, and I'm going to jack these bolts up closer until I got enough room to get my other short bolts on there, and then that's it. Well, the gasket material is all squeezed out. All four bolts are drawn up tight. So we are ready to fire this up tomorrow. Well, actually it is tomorrow. It is 2:15 now. Got a little crumbling right there. But when you look on up in there, I don't see any sand in there, so I think we're good. Alright, let's see. Got a crack there, don't I? But the pan looks clean, just as clean as it did before. Let me stick my arm down in there. Got some cracks going on there too, don't I? That's concerning. But you get down here and that's got me worried. It's fixing to get rough. Rest assured, if we have a tornado, that furnace ain't going nowhere, and as long as it's holding my building down, I don't believe it will either. Well, unfortunately, we didn't have good results with this pour the next day. We did succeed in keeping it pouring from one mold to the other. As we would tilt it back, it wouldn't freeze off. So we have that resolved. Now the problem is, as you can see, it's not a very thick stream of iron. And now I have an idea that it's our blower, because it's already 3 days past this day that you're watching, and I have retrofitted a bigger blower, pumping more air into the system. And even though I haven't had a chance to run it on molds, I do believe we're getting a lot hotter now, which makes me kind of second guess whether I should have taken the pouring spout that I originally had on there off. That's the problem with making too many changes at once during tests, is you've increased a lot of variables that you are going to be hard to track and put your finger on. Unfortunately, this is not a cheap test, and not to mention re-ramming the bottom. Of course, for the test, I'm just leaving the bottom on and just, dealing with the remelting slag and whatever crap was left in there from before. We won't be doing that when we get back to pouring molds again. So after these 6 molds that I poured, I realized we need to just shut it down. I've got a lot of work tied up in those molds, and none of them made it. So I at least have 6 left. And in all, we're going to be ramming about 40 of these. So as you can see how much iron it takes to fill one of these, I don't want to be hand ladling it, as I said earlier. The cracks in the refractory, I am going to be monitoring those. I do have some special patch that I use from time to time, and I will be putting a good coating on the furnace, trying to prolong the life of the refractory. But anyway, guys, that's it. Like I said, if you plan on coming down to Ironfest South, I'm looking forward to seeing you. And until the next time, we'll talk to you later. I've got a little more work to do on this furnace, but I think we're getting very, very close to where I want to be. But until then, we'll talk to you later. And again, happy belated Easter. I hope you had a great time with your family last weekend. For those who have been asking about the Windy Hill Foundry hats, these are now available on my website, windyhillfoundry.com, under stores, or you can click on the above link. These are on the pricey side, but keep in mind the shipping is included. Have a good day.